I'm not interested in understanding any of the deeper meanings, and I don't want to know anything because I hate that kid. I literally yelled out, "For Turkish delight!" I was so mad. I paused the movie, and I went out back, and I paced. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Let's Talk Stories. I'm 1/3 of your host, Jared.
And I'm Charles.
Oh, hi. Don't mind me. I was just reading the production guide behind the scenes written by The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe's producer, Perry Moore. I have been reading this book, rereading it. It was a thrift store find. And I've been rereading it all weekend, and it's made me very happy and also appreciate the movie more. So if I'm more appreciative of this movie that we're talking about today, it is because I have this book that helps me appreciate all the magic that went into it, and these poor souls did not. All right, I'm done.
Get your copy in the show notes. No,
That was very well
totally.
done.
That sounded like a plug, like such a good plug of that book. So it's just
Thank
like
you.
everybody should get one.
Everyone needs to go to the thrift store and find it.
I guess we got to find something. I don't own anything cool like you guys. You guys all have like these cool like little fucking books and comics that you can like hold up, and like we've never watched
I
anything.
found this in a box this weekend.
Oh my god.
That is the exact copy that I used to have.
Oh my god. See, you guys have like I have these 2 tubs of books next to me. Not a single thing that we've watched or going to watch is in there related to it. So I'm just like every time you guys are like cool and you're like looking, I'm just, you know what, next time I'm just going to be reading a book in general, and that's just going to be my thing. I should have been reading a book about this one, that way I could have been like, you know, my genuine disinterest. However, we are in fact talking about The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, the Chronicles of Narnia.
The 2005
today.
version, not
Yes.
the 70s BBC version. That was my
I
introduction.
watched that. I was genuinely creeped out.
When did you watch
Genuinely.
it? Like recently for the first time, or did you see it as a kid?
No, I saw it as a kid. Well,
Yeah.
teenager.
Okay, so I saw it
Kid.
as a kid. This was way before this version, and as a kid, it was totally fine. I thought it was strange looking, but totally fine. And then I saw some clips of it recently, and I was like, oh, but it did not match what was in my memory as a kid. So it was weird.
Mr. Beaver really freaked me out. I stopped watching once I saw him. I was like, it was already a really dark vibe, which is very, very stereotypical of literature and film from England in that time period, I feel like. But the movie magic was just not there, and it was disturbing.
70s BBC.
So before we jump into this madness, what have you guys been up to?
This is Narnia. I'm so sorry.
And
That
then
was so dumb of me.
you get kicked into the wardrobe, and just like
Anywho,
somebody Sparta kicks you right into Narnia. Oh, that'd be hilarious.
Honestly, I
would have watched that movie. But that's part 3. That's what happens in the third one that never got made. That's exactly how it starts. But yeah, so what have you guys been up to this week?
I've been trying to catch up on all the classic Disney films that I never enjoyed when I was younger because, again, I was creeped out by 70s BBC. So, most recent one was I watched Hercules yesterday, and that was really good. I enjoyed that one.
I was going to watch that the other day, but I ended up not.
Nostalgia for that movie aside, in terms of more of an objective view, I find the first half of that movie, good, but kind of generic. But then it takes this different tonal shift and becomes much more serious and interesting than I remembered it in my head. Plus, Susan Egan, my goodness gracious.
Yes.
Yes. Proof that Tolkien's elves do exist, I will say.
Yes.
What about you?
Speaking of Disney, yesterday or 2 days ago, I wasn't feeling great, and I rewatched Treasure Planet. Here's a fun story. Somehow I saw almost all of the 2000 Disney movies in the theaters, which is interesting because they weren't seen, right? That they were just not popular. But this one I missed out on, which made me really sad as a kid because I love the boats in space and that whole thing. I was like, yes, somehow I missed out on it. Never saw it. As a kid, started seeing on TV. As an older kid, as a preteen, I was like, oh yeah, it's pretty good. But I didn't have really attachment to it. And everyone was like, oh, it's this underrated classic. And my sister hadn't seen it. So a couple years ago, I said, I'll show it to you. I saw it, and it Did not click with me. I was like, this doesn't work for me. It just wasn't clicking with me. But everyone is like, Treasure Planet is amazing. Oh my gosh, it's amazing. It's amazing. So I was like, you know what? Maybe I was in a weird headspace. I'm gonna go rewatch it. And I rewatched this movie. It was really good. It was really good. I won't get into it because then I'll have to go like TED Talk film professor, but it does something really specific that is so different for a lot of these kinds of all ages films that really hit me to the point where like my eyes were starting to water because it was really speaking to me specifically on that day. And I was like, wow, this is really amazing. So proof the 2000s is underrated era of animated film in general. But I've also been watching the new Lazarus anime on Adult Swim because that is from Watanabe, the creator of Cowboy Bebop and Samurai Champloo and Space Dandy and a bunch of other animes, so I have to watch it. And I've been enjoying the new anime adaptation of Anne of Green Gables, which is called Anne Shirley. I wish I could write a story like Anne of Green Gables. It is not in me. I can't do it, I don't think. Lord, I wish I could write like this. I am insanely jealous. Like you think like, oh, it's science fiction and fantasy and no. Yes, but I really wish I could write like Ella Montgomery. And also, by the way, side note, while we're talking about literature, random happened across the 2006 adaptation of Jane Eyre. It's a 2-part miniseries. It's basically like a 4-hour film. And it is so good. I forgot how good this is. I forgot how good Jane Eyre is. And I've been like, in the back of my brain, I'm like, I don't know how the Bronte sisters made Wuthering Heights and Jane Eyre and The Town of Wilfell Hall and etc., but they did. And it's insane. And now I've completely confused the listeners. I'm sorry, I'm talking too much again. I've completely confused the listeners because they're like, I thought he was just a big fat geek. Why is he talking about Jane Eyre? Joke's on you. I'm into that.
Charles has very top.
The man of many tastes.
The word my sister has used is eclectic. And by the way, thank you to my sister because she is the one that introduced me to Austen and Bronte and North and South and all those 1800s books.
So I knew that they made a new Anne of Green Gables show, and I was hesitant to watch it because I feel like after appreciating the movie and the book, I couldn't bear to see a TV show ruin it. But my sister was watching it and she was telling me you should definitely watch it. But the fact that they're making an anime about it is very fascinating to me.
Here's a weird deep cut. This is the second anime.
No way.
There was one back in the late 70s or the 80s, I can't remember the date, which was produced or led by Takahata. I think it's Isai. I cannot pronounce his first name. Takahata, who is one of the main filmmaker directors of Studio Ghibli. And he did an Anne of Green Gables. And this is kind of like a remake of that anime. So there's 2.
No way. That's
fun fact, anime has this weird European literature interest. There's a Heidi adaptation. Studio Ghibli did Rania the Robber's Daughter, which is fantastic, by the way. There's just a ton of European literature anime adaptations. Even a Wizard of Oz. I haven't seen it, but I've heard there is an Wizard of Oz anime adaptation.
Okay, that I'm not surprised by.
Yeah. So.
All right, Jared, what Disney movies?
Yeah, I'm so sorry, boss.
No, you're good. You're good. So for me, I an interesting weekend of things that I watched. I watched Emperor's New Groove, finally. I did check that out.
Did you like it?
No.
You didn't like it?
No, it's not that I didn't like it. I didn't. I was indifferent about it when it was over. It wasn't like to me. It wasn't bad. It wasn't good. It was just, It was funny. There were funny moments that made me laugh a lot. The real problem that I realized that I had with it is I have an explicit bias against David Spade. So anything that he's in, it bothers me so much. So I just listening to him for an hour and 15 minutes was just terrible. But John Goodman made up for it as I have been watching him on The Righteous Gemstones for the last, week.
Oh, he's in that show?
Yeah.
That's cool.
On that show. Yeah, so
I wouldn't think it's so long.
Yeah, he's hilarious in that show. And so I was like, yeah, you made it worth it. And of course Eartha Kitt. But yeah, so I was like, no, this is okay. But now I can say I've seen it, so I can check it off the list. After that, I watched a Goofy movie. And in my living room, if you can imagine it, don't try. I did the eye to eye dance because I just needed to. It just spoke to my soul. And then proceeded to lose my dinner because I had a burger and fries that I hadn't eaten all day, and I was so hungry and so ready for it, and I just sat it on the table to dance. And then when I sat down to dance, my fucking styrofoam thing just toppled over and everything fell. And you know the 5 second rule that exists. Awesome rule. I would go for it. My dogs, however, said 0.5 second rule, and they ate it all. And so that was the end of that. And I was like, well, I guess I'm starving tonight. So that was that.
It's so sad.
I thought you meant lose your dinner as in you threw up because you ate.
No, I was not dancing that
you love
hard.
a Goofy movie so much you threw up, which is perfect.
No. I literally lost my food, but it's fine. It's fine. I hate them. Then after, Sunday was all about My Hero Academia for a big chunk of the day, and then I was like, I need actually, before Hero Academia, I watched a show called Fallen, which a friend of mine asked me to watch. They made me promise I would give it a shot. I did, and I regret it so much. It was 5 hours that I will never get back. But it was basically just this weird thing about, she thought I would like it because it was about like fallen angels and religion. This woman who like is framed for a crime that she didn't commit, but has to go to like this cult like rehabilitation center. It's based off a novel series, as most shows are these days. And I was just like, yeah, no. So I was like, I need a palate cleanser. That's when I watched My Hero Academia. And then I convinced her to watch One Tree Hill, which made me want to watch One Tree Hill. So I watched One Tree Hill and just, oh my God. It's so terrible that it's so good. I love it so much. Terrible dialogue, horrible dialogue, wonderful angsty teenage drama. It's so good. My favorite line of all time last night. Why are you being like this? People are mean. You got to deal with it. And then he just turns around and walks into the gym. And I was like, he really said that. He said that with a straight face. That was a line. That was an actor's delivery. He chose that. And the director was like, cut print, we're using that. And I was just like, I'm so glad that he did. I'm so glad that he did. So, yeah, but I love it. And then I was just like, then I squealed like a little baby girl when I found out that they are doing a revival for One Tree Hill that's going to be on Netflix. And the original showrunner will not be involved, which makes me happy because he's an evil man who does evil things. Yeah, he's not a very nice man, and all the women on that show were like, we hate him. So they were like, we're going to do it ourselves. So they are, and I'm so excited to see them now. I think it's perfect because their characters were the same age as me growing up, so it feels like they'll be at the same age when we catch up with them, and it's like, oh, this is like, you get that full circle moment. It'll be kind of like what would happen if Smallville did a thing, and Clark was like Superman, but he's my age. It'd be like, oh, it's like a full circle moment of like, we're back. But yeah, so I did all of that. That was really nice. Also, you know what's really good? Taco Bell is really great when you are watching One Tree Hill. I don't know why, but it just makes it taste better.
My husband would say Taco Bell is great all the time, regardless of what you're watching, and I am inclined to agree, so.
I don't know about that, but it is good when you're watching angsty TV dramas.
I'll give you that.
It's not great, though, if you run out of toilet paper.
This is true.
Which was an issue yesterday.
Now we're not getting the Taco Bell endorsement.
I'm so sorry, Taco Bell. I'm so sorry.
I'll bring it back. I have rediscovered the Baja Blast, and I'm trying really hard not to be addicted to it because I know me. I know what will happen. I can't do it. So it's a good thing that I'm poor, so I can't get a Baja Blast like all the time, you know. But I want to be addicted to it because it makes me happy. There, now Taco Bell will get the sponsorship back.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah,
I had Taco Bell. And it was great, but then realized we didn't have toilet paper. It was a horrible Sunday for me. So, screw you, Charmin. Anyway, I can't blame Charmin for me not shopping. But
I can't. Screw Charmin. I hate those bears. I've been having to deal with those bears my entire life. They were hand-drawn. Now they're CGI. I can't stand them. Families should not be obsessed about wiping their ass. It's creepy.
And we have made it full circle again to animation.
Yes. You have thought a lot about this, Charles.
It's not my fault. I'm just going about my day. And they're like, here's my giant bear ass. And I'm like, stop it. The father, the mother, the children, every time.
Didn't they have a song at one point? Wasn't it like
No, I still have a song from when my siblings were potty training stuck in my head. Please don't.
There was
No,
a
but like
song. Yes.
Charmin had a song for like
It
a
was a
long
song.
time. I don't remember what it was, but it was like I don't remember what it was, but I
The
know that I'm
tune
gonna have to
was
YouTube it later. But
Why do I know this? Because it wouldn't leave me alone.
yes, and it was and they did the little cha 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 whenever they were walking around, and then you have like little pieces of toilet paper on their butt, and it was just like
See my point? You see my
yeah.
point?
It was like,
Ay, ay, ay.
they
Anywho,
also escaped from Narnia, and they got a career in toilet paper advertising. At least that's the canon I choose to go with. So, all of that's being said, did you guys ever check the closet for a portal to Narnia growing up at any point?
absolutely.
I knew you did. I knew it.
I did not because
I did think Neverland was real too. So it was not
Fair.
just Narnia. It was.
Fair.
I also
I thought that too,
with
though, so I can't.
Tony Abbott's The Secret of Droon. That was the first book series I ever read after I started reading. My mom used to read it to me, so there. And that's like they go to a basement and the staircase takes them to Droon. So I was just that kind of child. Sorry, Taylor.
That's fair. That's fair.
You were saying.
Well, my answer is a little bit more boring. I did not because I read the prequel before I read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. So I knew where the wardrobe came from, and I knew that it wasn't just like the back of any old closet. I knew that it was from the wood that the first apple, the magic apple tree in Narnia. So in my head, like, I knew where the magic in the wardrobe came from, and I was like, there's no way I'm cool enough that any of that magic would have been something that someone had access to and built something in my house.
You robbed yourself.
I really did. I was too much like Susan. I was way too practical of a child. It's very sad, actually.
Yeah, I don't think I never did that. I never did that because I like I said, I've only seen this movie one time. I remember exactly where we watched it. We watched it when I was in a group home. We watched it as like a movie night thing. And I do remember, though, however, how cool it was. I didn't think it was the case, but they have these bureaus in our rooms. Each of us had a bureau, and I always thought how cool it would be if I just opened it and I could go in there and disappear from this place and just never come back. That was my whole thing, but I knew that it wasn't the case. I just really wanted that to be the case. But I never, that was like 2006 or 7 that I saw that movie. So yeah, the other day when I watched it was the first time that I've watched it since. So yeah, oh my God. That's like the whole figuring out if you have superpowers thing. Testing out if you have superpowers thing. I've done it so many times. I've done it recently. So it's not even like a little kid thing. But anyway, other than that, were you guys ever screwed up by any other fantasy worlds other than Narnia? I mean, not that you were screwed up by Narnia, but
It defines screwed up. What do you mean?
Yeah.
I mean, like, did it drastically impact your expectations of life, or did it ruin your innocence in any way?
Ruin innocence, no, but definitely for me, like, I really truly believe this. I mean, you're going to like the deepest recesses of my brain here. Really truly believe there were portals, there were secret doors that led to places. I just had to find them. So that was a huge thing for me for a long time. And that kind of evolved when I was a teenager for various reasons of, like you said, I can escape. If I can get out, if I come across the right puddle of water, the right circumstances, I could get out of here. But no, I've always been like that. Like, it's funny, honestly. Like, I was collecting the Batman ideas I had last night for like a fan audio drama series, and I came across a piece of dialogue, and I shared that dialogue with you. I said, "Oh, that wasn't that bad." And I was telling my brother, I said, "The thing is, I'm not going to say it's like, oh, I'm such a good Batman writer, but it's not really hard for me to come up with stuff like that for Batman because part of my brain is always in Gotham City. And by that, I mean, it's like, I don't want to be on Earth. I'm always want to be in Middle Earth, Discworld, somewhere, not here, anywhere, but here. So that was me. It doesn't matter if it's Gotham or Middle Earth, just anything.
Anything but here.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
For me, it was when I was reading it, it was very real to me. So reading the story was the portal to me. And then when I was done reading the story, I was back on Earth, and it was sad. So that's why reading in general for me was so magical, because every single time I picked up a book, it was a portal to take me into that other world where things made sense. And even if they didn't, I knew that they would work out in the end.
Jalen, why are you so freaking mature about it?
It was really sad. I promise you, it was so sad how mature I was. I tell you, like, this logic ruined my imagination, though. because
No, I
I've
love it.
related so much to Susan in these books. It's actually really interesting. This is jumping ahead, but to dive into the discussion about Narnia, one thing that I really appreciated in the movie that they showed so much was such a realistic dynamic between siblings, and especially with the birth order, because your birth order really affects your personality. I mean, I've seen it so many times, but being firstborn will mess with your psyche a lot more than you think, and being the youngest will do the same thing. So there's a very unique pain that everyone carries depending on their family situation. And even if you love your siblings, even if you love your family, there's still a very unique pain that they can inflict on you just because you are who you are. And I think that they did such a good job of realistically portraying that in this movie, and then also showing the maturity and the healing that comes through the maturity as they go through all these struggles together and come out stronger in the end. So I always really appreciated seeing all the different unique struggles for each of the siblings and the way they interacted together and the different pain that they each carried play out so realistically, because I was like, I can relate to that. I've been there. I've seen that happen.
I agree with that. And I heard what you said, and I think that's a great way they do this. They kind of update stuff because it's not being chosen. But I was looking specifically about Susan. I couldn't remember Susan's queenly nickname. I was like, is it? And I want to make sure. So that would make you Susan the Gentle, by the way. I wanted to make sure I had that right. Sorry.
That sounds about right.
I was trying to look up a compliment for you. Sorry. I did hear what you said.
Thank you.
That sounds like Jaylon anyway, since she never gets mad, and she's, even though I think she's really a secret warrior of some kind that we don't know about.
Definitely not.
I'm slightly convinced that Jaylon is some variation of Kim Possible, and we just don't know.
Your hair.
I'm gonna believe that. That is.
That's a lot. There's an episode of Kim Possible. They swap bodies, right? And so that's the thing that Ron and Kim's body. She goes, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Your hair. It's so flippy ever since."
That's my headcanon. I'm gonna just believe that. So side note, speaking of, allow me to go down this slight rabbit hole. But remember when I was asking you guys in the group chat about Step by Step, the TV show?
Yes.
Okay, so there's this TV show, listeners. Some of you may know it, depending on what age you are, but it used to come on Friday nights during the TGIF hour, or like 2 hours that would happen back in the 90s. It used to come on, like, I think it was ABC. It might have been ABC. I don't remember. But it was where, like, Full House came on, Family Matters came on, Step by Step, all of that. Step by Step was about these two families. It was kind of like the Brady Bunch, but like redone. But it was basically the Brady Bunch for the modern era of the 90s. But there was a particular character in there named Cody, who was like the nephew of the dad, and he was like this surfer dude who was like really, really like dumb. Like he was the typical sitcom dummy. Like you knew that, but he always had like these random philosophical wise things to say randomly. Like he was stupid most of the time, but he would just like drop these like really wise things. But then he also was always wherever there was like, whenever, you know how like in those old 90s sitcoms you always had like that the gang that would be like, you'd have the episode and there'd be like the gang that would like be from the rough part of town, and the main characters would like be visiting the rough part of town and then run into these guys and they're gonna like rob them, and they play that weird fucking music that thing before it like goes to the next. So he was always in those scenes randomly, and he would just show up and then he would just beat their asses every single time. And it was, back in the 90s, he was in all these like kickboxing movies and stuff like that. So it was the only way to like, I guess, show off his fighting game. But then while I was watching this, I was like, I have this sneaking suspicion that like, this is my fan theory. It was the first time I've ever had a fan theory about anything ever in my life. I see people have fan theories all the time. I never do. But I was like, this one's my theory. Cody was a vigilante, and he was just like, he lived in his van. He was always wherever bad things were happening. He knew martial arts. And I figured he was like Clark Kent. He would play stupid and make everybody think he was dumb. Like the fight that he had in the bar, he beat the whole gang's ass by himself. But every time he knocked a dude down, he was like, "Whoa, dude!" And it was just so funny. But I was like, this dude's Batman. That's it. He's Batman secretly. Anyway, I say all of that to say that I feel like when I thought about that, I thought about Jaylon, and I was like, I feel like Jaylon might just be a superhero, and we don't know.
You're going to be sadly disappointed. I hope you never get into a situation where you're dependent on me to save you.
She's gonna be like the Futurama joke where it's like, no, the bad things are happening. Help him, Jesus. And there's a character like dressing up as Jesus. Context, it's no time. He goes, I help those who help themselves.
Yep.
The moment she said that was like the first thing I think is like we're all together for some strange reason and someone tries to rob us, and then like I look around and Jaylon's just running down the street,
That would be me.
which is hilarious to me. Oh my god. You're creating all these awesome headcanons right now for me, and I'm loving it. But yeah, so I get that. I still think that there are portals, and like you said, the right puddle of water, the right phone booth, even though you can never find a phone booth these days. But I just feel like it. I have to believe that magic still exists. Not still, but magic does exist in our world, because otherwise it's just too depressing to not believe that there has to be. I feel like there has to be. It's like the fucking Wendigo that everybody's like doesn't exist. I believe it exists. I believe, and there's a reason why I will never go. Well, I mean, I may go to Wyoming, but I'm convinced that the Wendigo lives in Wyoming and several other areas of that in that part of the country, and he's a shape-shifting monster, and I believe that wholeheartedly. So I just feel like all those things have to exist. So this whole movie concept, the idea of like stumbling into a magical world where you kind of are the hero. It's obviously it's wish fulfillment. It's fantasy fulfillment for probably 95% of us in the world. Most of us imagine that. We all, imagine what it would be like to, pick up a pen and click the thing and then it becomes a sword like you're Percy Jackson. Or you know what I mean? Or you just kind of, like I said, you stumble in the wardrobe and you're fighting the White Witch or whatever, which realistically would be horrible and horrifying. But nonetheless, if we all we will. But yeah, I think that's fascinating that exists. So all of that's to say, you guys, we watched this movie. You guys have seen this movie, obviously, many times. Charles, I believe you have mixed feelings about it.
Okay, so I will give the introductory statement here now, and without getting into it. I love this book. I love this movie, because it's a great adaptation of the book. So it's basically the same thing, right? I love The Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe. I grew up with this book. It means a lot to me. I've read it several times. I very much understand and respect Lewis, C.S. Lewis, the author. But there's a lot of context around Narnia, and especially Lewis, that upsets me. It's kind of a personal thing. It's kind of like how I came into being, how I grew up. So again, it's not there, but it upsets me, and it kind of year by year by year, Lewis's star gets dimmer and dimmer for me, and it's really frustrating. Even though I adore this book and I love Narnia, and like again, if that new adaptation does happen next year, hold my calls. I'm gonna watch it. Like no ifs or buts. Absolutely, and it means quite a bit to me. It's generally one of my favorite books and means a lot. Like I am one of those people where I love this book. Was the first time a book ever talked to me. So in the book, the whole thing where the author talks to you about when Aslan dies, about you crying. And I became one of those people with Aslan, that it does really move me and it does really touch me, and there's a lot in here. But I can't wear a Narnia t-shirt, if to put it in kind of a sense, because of how I grew up and how the world has become. And Lewis upsets me, and the cult around Lewis upsets me, even though I'm a huge fan of his work. And I if someone says Lewis is a genius, I'd be like, yeah, he's a genius. But there are complexities to it that, let's say, Tolkien doesn't have, is what I'm trying to say. Like I said, I know this is confusing. It's like, how could you do this and that?
It makes total sense to me, because especially when you have a very specific pain from your growing up that is connected so deeply to an ideology that came from a certain person or a certain story and the people around that person and story, I can definitely understand it upsetting you to the point of not being able to be a fan of what you want to be a fan of because the story itself is good.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So there you go.
And Jaylon, you love it.
I do. Interesting. Again, when we were talking about it before, this came up. But I would say, and this might just be a testament to the ultra conservatism that I grew up in and the legalism around that. But I read both C.S. Lewis's fiction books and his nonfiction books when I was growing up. And his nonfiction books and the way that he described religion was the very first time in my life and still one of the few spots that I know I can go back to. And it feels like a breath of fresh air because I'm like, okay, it's not as complicated as everyone is making it. This is simple. You can just look at it with the joy and faith and belief of a child. And it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be all on you. You don't have to try. You can just be a child and stand in awe at the world that's around us and the grace that surrounds our stories. So, to me, I have a very different perspective, but again, it was because of how I grew up and the way that I was surrounded by people and ideologies and people who reinforced those ideologies in sometimes very painful ways in my life. So, again, it's hard to say that it's any one person's fault because a lot of times it's your perspective as a person and it's the people surrounding you who interpret different other perspectives from figures and you take that interpretation in a certain way. So, there's a lot of things, it's like the game of telephone. Things can get lost in translation. There's a lot of different perspectives that go into it, which is a magic of storytelling that we talk about a lot, where a story means something different to everyone because everyone has a different perspective that they bring to the table, that they view the story through. So I think that it's really interesting to have these conversations, especially around a story that has such spiritual meaning for people. And being able to have a conversation around it is so important because you get to see through other people's perspectives and you get to understand how something that means a lot to you can mean a lot to another person, but maybe in a different way. And so I think that it's awesome that we get to have these conversations where we share each other's perspectives.
That's fair. Okay, so I didn't like it.
Just lead with that.
Yeah, that's.
I am curious though. Was it the Lewis-ness or was it just the fantasy?
I had a lot of problems with it. First of all, I will say this. Now that you held up that book, it tickled a part of my 5th grade brain that remembers that I read that book.
Interesting.
Yeah. I didn't remember reading it until I saw that book and it was like, oh, I remember reading that book, specifically in the 5th grade. I don't remember what it was about. I don't remember any of that. I just know that I remember reading it. The movie aside, I remember the talking lion part. I remember, and I remember a teacher reading it to us and us reading along with her. That is the extent of what I remember about it. I had other interests in 5th grade. That was not one of them. Most likely
bloomer.
It was, huh?
Early bloomer, right?
Yeah, I was. I was again the running gag of our show. I was after women.
Warning: when he says we're after women, he means the romantic pining sense and not da.
Yes, I wasn't a predator. I was just chasing women around. I was no, but I was crushing on girls in the 5th grade. In the 5th grade, I had problems, but that's where I was. So there was no lion, witch, or wardrobe for me. It was girl. That was the only thing that mattered to me.
The girl,
and the girl. Yeah, exactly. So as far as what I did not like about it. Okay, so you guys I feel like you guys talk about all the different things. There's so many different thematic layers here, and there's so much interesting stuff. And to me, it felt like I was watching. It was like one of those things. I mentioned it in one of the articles I wrote once about how when you feel like you're watching a bunch of people have a conversation in a different language, and you just don't get what they're saying. You know they're saying something important. You know that something's being said. You just don't know what it is. And that is how I felt watching this movie. Now to be fair, it could be my own emotional exhaustion and my inability to analyze things as of late, because lately I really haven't. I've taken Charles's advice balls to the wall of just kind of watching things and enjoying it for the sake of enjoying it and not trying to rip it apart and figure out what it all means. So to be fair, I went into this movie with that mindset. But even usually when I do that, I can't always turn that part of my brain off. So certain things will jump out at me. This movie, it just didn't. And it was starting to. It was starting to do what it needed to do. I was starting to get the whiff of oh, there's things being cooked up here and I need to understand it. And then Edmund came on the screen and then it just fucking went And I was just like, I'm not interested in understanding any of the deeper meanings, and I don't want to know anything because I hate that kid and I want to hit that kid so bad. I literally yelled out. I scared Brittany so bad, and the dogs and the cats, because I literally yelled out, "For Turkish delight!" And I was so mad. I paused the movie and I went out back and I paced for a few minutes because I just had to. The whole Turkish delight thing. And I know, Charles, I know that there's historical context for it all.
You're
But to
hurting
me,
my heart. You're hurting my Turkish heart.
Yeah, there is historical context. There is also stuff to it, but I think this kind of ties into if it was anything but whatever the hell Turkish delight is. Yeah, I know you've told me, I still don't get it, but I see your point. Continue. There's more, but I get your gist. I get it.
Listen, one of the things that bothers me more than anything, and it's not just in this movie, it is quite literally in any situation. If you only know one thing about me, know this. There is one trait amongst human beings that I find to be detestable. If I find it in you as a human, I will never like you, and I will hate you forever. Strong word, yes, but I will hate you. And that is disloyalty. I cannot stand disloyalty. It bothers me because I consider myself to be an extremely loyal person, and even to my own detriment, I will be loyal to people. And so when I see people in stories and movies, and I've even noticed it in my own stories, and maybe this is something I need to work on, but I almost actively avoid writing stories where characters are disloyal to each other. They may betray each other in ways that suck and or whatever, because I do believe you can betray someone without necessarily being disloyal to them, but disloyalty is a trait that I just can't stand. And so when I see it in a character, even if they are a child, even if they're being manipulated, even if there's all and I understood Edmund was manipulated and she was playing on his innocence and his naivete and his little mischievous nature, and she was doing that, and that's why it happened. But nonetheless, these were your siblings. They love you, and you're an idiot. And so that just took me out of it. And then I tried to claw my way back into it. And then when Aslan showed up, I was like, okay, I'm in here. I'm back. We're in. We can forget about Edmund. Maybe, headcanon wise, Aslan eats him or something like that. It's fine. Let's just continue to watch. So I did. And then he died. And then I was like, no. And then I was just like, now I give up. I give up on this movie. I give up so much on this movie. But to answer your question, Charles, besides my little petty things, the fantasy of it didn't bother me per se. Because I'm not anti-fantasy. I'm really not. Contrary to my Lord of the Rings, issues. But we all know my issues with Lord of the Rings has nothing to do with Lord of the Rings. It's the fandom that bothers me. And they wounded me. Now, these people, this particular story, the fantasy didn't bother me per se. I don't know. I didn't like the story itself. I just didn't love the story. I was like, okay, it's okay. I guess I felt about it the same way I felt about Emperor's New Groove. It was more like, I didn't hate it like, my God, I will never, I will recommend that everyone that exists never watch this film. It was not like that, but it also wasn't like, oh my God, I have to watch that again. This film moved me. It was more just like, okay, what do I watch next type of thing. And then I also was just thinking about like when I watched it back in the day, I think I liked it more back then. Maybe I was younger, and the idea of like I said, escaping and going somewhere else and going to a magical world, and my crazy hero complex that I had as a teenager where I needed to save the day and felt responsible, and the idea of being a hero was like so appealing to me. Now that as I revisit it as a 37-year-old, I'm thinking there's nothing appealing. I don't want to be a hero anymore. I think my innocence is lost, and because that innocence has been lost, though I feel like my innocence was kind of lost when I was a teenager already, but I think I was holding on to it. That's another thing. Side note, which is kind of related to this, but loss of innocence, I think, is one of those things that when I've always thought of loss of innocence, I've always thought of it as like this all together, all at once thing. But I've come to realize that loss of innocence is not an all at once thing. It's a thing that happens. It's a thing that happens over the course of time. It's like you get beat up through life or whatever, and it just slowly but surely begins to kind of just bleed out of you, and then eventually it's just gone. My innocence started to go when I was 6 years old. I knew that. So when I was a teenager watching this, I don't think I was fully. I still believed in things. I still wanted things. I still, not that I don't believe in things now, but I would say I'm more pragmatic about it all than I used to be. And when I saw this in the 2000s, it was kind of, I think I was just a little bit more innocent. And so I saw this film through that lens. And now, as a man who's kind of dead inside, I was like, oh, yeah, I don't feel the magic anymore of this. This just feels like a 2000s fantasy movie that's a little grainy and a little weird. And, though that war scene, that battle scene that I said, still to this day, gets me. I remember my filmmaking mentor showed that scene to me too when he was teaching me a lesson on sound design, and we were talking about how that moment where the music is playing and then it all just fades away and all you hear is that kind of heartbeat, and so they just clash, and that's just perfect, fantastic. The battle scene in general was really, really good. I enjoyed that. I like watching the computer.
Something else I love in the production design of this movie, this was a time when they did do heavy CGI, yada, yada, but there are also prosthetics. So this Minotaur is like my favorite thing in the world.
Yes.
Like, I love this Minotaur so much.
Yes.
Makes me happy. Anyway.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, I guess that's my take on it. If you guys have a question for me, feel free to ask, but I don't have a lot on this one.
I find it really interesting going back to perspectives, because I will say from my experience, there were some books that I had that kind of rage to when I tried to read, and movies too. But I vividly remember it with a certain book that I read when I was really young, because every other Christian homeschooler thought that it was the best series since sliced bread. And I tried to read it, and I got so frustrated by this book because my sense of justice couldn't handle the protagonist being so unfairly treated. And
what was it?
It was Elsie Dinsmore.
Never heard of it.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. You really don't.
She's like, thank God, you don't. She's like, you shouldn't.
But I find it interesting because we talk about perspectives and how stories mean different things and poke at different things in you depending on your perspective. And I feel like if you're at a point in your life where you've been loyal to people to the point of your own detriment, the theme of forgiveness, the lesson of forgiveness, isn't one that you need to be told right now because you're trying to learn how to be loyal to yourself. So in this story, when Edmund does something so horrible to his family who loves him, and then instead of gobbling him up, the lion dies for him so that he can redeem him and restore the family again.
Stupid.
Really, it hits something in you because
me, for sure.
It's not the lesson that your psyche is ready for right now because you're focusing on trying to be loyal to yourself first. And so seeing disloyalty forgiven like that is really, really difficult.
That's a good point because I feel like it's like the movie was trying to teach you a lesson in forgiveness and the importance of forgiveness and learning. Like even when Aslan was talking to Edmund, we obviously don't hear the conversation that they have. But then, he's like, everything that's happened, it's in the past. There's no need to bring it up again. And, I'm like, no, we need to bring it up and we need to make him feel bad about it all the time. Every time we see him, I just need to be like, bro, you did this. You did that. Why'd you do that? Why'd you do it? Even if you're on our side, I just need to know, why'd you do that? And then even after you tell me, I'm going to ask you again because I need you to feel it. And so Aslan being all wise and decent about it it just kind of pissed me off a little bit because I was just like, I don't know. I was envious of that because I was like, I don't have that. I don't have the ability. That's not true. Because oddly, you know what it is? Okay, I'm gonna go deep and vulnerable here. But you know what it is? What really pissed me off was the fact that in Aslan, I actually saw myself and it pissed me off at him because it was you ever see somebody do something that you do all the time and it just makes you so mad when you realize that, oh, that's what I do and it makes me mad that I did that? That is what it was. Because it was given my current circumstances, in my situation where I've been betrayed and disloyalty within all that, and my ability to forgive and give the benefit of the doubt has been something that I've held against myself for quite some time now of what the fuck is wrong with you? You stand up for yourself, do right by yourself. And so then seeing it in a movie in such a way of just kind of the universe being here's the act of mercy you showed and this is what it looks like. And I'm just ew, why did you do that? But yeah, now that I think about that, I didn't think about it like that before, but I think, yeah, this might have been the worst time to watch this movie because I think my own emotional drama kind of bled into that a little bit, I think.
And
But I'm interested.
I
Go.
think that's interesting because I hadn't realized until last year that for me, with Harry Potter, without getting into a lot of this, that I grew to develop this unpleasant feeling towards Harry. And then when I revisited the series last year, I was telling my friend, I was like, I realized I've been jealous of Harry for a long time, and that's how I've grown up versus him and me and this and aged. And it was interesting. I'm like, oh, and the answer is that same thing. It's like I see parts of not me, I was good, but like those connections. And it had gotten to me for a long time, which I agree with. I will say to clarify the whole Emmett thing. So the thing is, to my understanding, World War II, Turkish delight, very expensive candy. Edmund is starving, and basically he's starving, and she just gave him like, I don't know, those new brownie M's, which are really good by the way. So that kind of thing. But even as a kid, and I'll get around to like how I first experienced the story because it's really important to understand how I feel about it all. But even as a kid, I was like, you're being bad for food? What the and I think the thing is it works. When this book was published? 1950. So 1950, that makes sense. By the time I saw it, which would have been like 2001 ish, it doesn't work. And I think that's kind of one of the things that ultimately frustrates me about Lewis is I think Lewis thinks he's timeless and ageless. He's not. I'm sorry, he just isn't. It's great for children, but I don't necessarily feel he is as ageless as he and people make him out to be, which is a little frustrating. But to that end, I think it's interesting you say that about adulthood because honestly, if I didn't know this story and I came in as an adult, don't I want to give myself credit, but I don't know if I would enjoy it necessarily as much. But then again, I'm also a huge fantasy guy, so maybe it would click differently in my head. I'm not sure, but it is a fair point because I think a lot of this really does work only as a child because the sense is really for food for a candy. But if you were to put it, if I was Evan's age, if you would give me, I don't know, the new copy of Kingdom Hearts 2 with the PlayStation 2, maybe the whole thing is kind of ridiculous. Like that little pinpoint, let's put it out. Aslan sends these children to war. What the frack is this? Right? Like, I have thought this for a long time. Like, he makes Peter a general in the book. He's talking to him about if you have to assault the castle versus if it's on the open field. What? What is this? Right? It's insanity. And the whole ending is, people have joked about this ending for years, and it's BS and makes no sense. And I know he does stuff with it with Prince Caspian, fine, whatever, I don't care, but it's always bugged me. And I know it's like, well, it's a metaphor for the children coming back to their families after World War II. Oh, BS, Lewis. But as a kid, though, totally made sense. Because as a kid, of course you can swing the sword. Of course you can lead an army. Of course, war is not the worst invention humankind has ever made. The ending was still stupid. Not stupid, but like ridiculous. But it was ridiculous in the same way like fairy tale endings can just be ridiculous. It's just that thing that happens. You just kind of accept it. So it's interesting that you bring that up. And I was just going to say with Edmund, what's funny is that as a kid, I really didn't like Edmund. Edmund was the worst because it's like, yo, he's already a little shit anyway. Excuse me for the language, but that's like the specific definition. And then even the thing too, like when him and Lucy come back out of the wardrobe, and he just lies about what they saw. It was like right. And then so obviously as a kid, Peter was my favorite because Peter was cool. Peter was the older brother. I was the middle child, so of course Peter was like, and he's King Peter the Magnificent. It's like he's got the sword, he's got the shield. But it was as I got older that I realized the whole thing is that Edmund does screw up and he isn't deserving of forgiveness because he almost gets his family killed over something as stupid as his own little greed and being just a little shit in general. Again, sorry if that's the technical term. But I always loved that we never heard what Aslan says and that it is okay to forgive and to let go. And thus, I always loved that Edmund's title is Edmund the Just. So this isn't in the film, but in the book, as Edmund grows up to be king, he always detects people's BS. And he's always more merciful and he's always more wiser because he screwed up badly. And this pays off in Prince Caspian really wonderfully. So I was like, oh no, wait, Edmund's my favorite because he's the one that actually has problems that I can understand and relate to. So that's not my defense. Your point is totally true, by the way. And I apologize. I should have warned you about Turkish Delight because I get it. I do get it. But it is something that is resonating with me. And as a very brief side detail, when I complain about modern like animated films for children or all ages, whatever, not having substance, it's not me going, back in my day, things were better. Why can't they entertain me? It's not that. What I do get bothered by is that sense of the lessons that kids can take from something, the meaningfulness, because they got to grow up. And if kids don't have a Goofy movie to fall back on, because remember, a Goofy movie was a dumb baby movie. We all loved it, but we thought it was a dumb baby movie. And then we go back and go, oh my gosh, it's a masterpiece, right? If you don't have something to fall back on, then it worries me. So this is more of a concern for children, what they're getting. And that kind of ties in with something I was saying about Treasure Planet, but also with Narnia, is that that's actually something that means something for kids. I just want to throw that out there of something more meaningful. That I'm not being an old curmudgeon. I swear I'm not. It's not that. I get frustrated because I don't like the idea. One, that kids don't deserve great storytelling. Screw that. Two, but also that when they're going to grow up in a very, very bad world and they need something personal for them to take. So I wanted to throw that out.
That is very true. One of my favorite quotes that I stumbled across when I got into the world of C.S. Lewis and Tolkien was by G.K. Chesterton. And I will say, some people that I grew up with had a real problem with fantasy. And that always really saddened me. Because
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. But it's so sad. I find fiction to be more than true, and very, very necessary to the world and the way that we understand the world and the way that we can function with hope. But this quote was, fairy tales don't teach children that dragons are real. Children already know that dragons are real. It teaches them that the dragons can be beaten. And I think that's the purpose of good stories for children that deal with heavy things.
And I would also add to that, if you want to extend that too, in terms of how to train your dragon, that dragons can be friends. Depends on the kind of dragon you're talking about. So that's true. I was going to say, I find fiction to be more than true. It needs to be a t-shirt, and we should start selling it. That's a great.
Yes.
Great
Yes.
Jot that down.
Yep.
So yeah.
I on a side note, I wonder, you guys are talking about your childhood, your childhood, I guess. Yeah, whatever. The childhood that you had in regards to books. And you guys obviously read different books when you were younger and they had different impacts on your life. So what is one series that really, really touched you as a kid that you still kind of carry with you today?
I always go back to the Wingfeather saga. And to be fair, I was 15 when I first started reading the Wingfeather saga. But it is something that I've returned to year after year, and it means something different to me, but just as profound every year. So I would say that's probably the fiction series that has impacted me the most. But there were a lot of books that, in general, or a lot of stories that I still carry with me. I mean, we all carry pieces of stories, even if we forget what they are specifically. They get under our skin and we carry pieces with them throughout our lives. So it might be affecting us and we don't even...
There's a lot I could say interesting. I was this weird time. I was given the Bionicle book series. So Bionicle was my toy. Me and my brother, that was our toy. That was our generation's toy. And there were comic books, but there were books of the story that was more depthful, more interesting. I got to read those. There was a Boba Fett series that was set after Attack of the Clones, the young Boba Fett, that I was really into. And the same thing, there was old Jack Sparrow books of a young Jack Sparrow, and this was a hell of a lot of fun for me, and I got to read those. There's just a ton of books like that. But specifically, though, here's this weird... There's a lot I could go into in this, and I could go on and on and on, but I'll zero in on something really interesting. So we'll circle back around to this because this is Narnia. We can't not talk about it. But my school was Bethel Christian School, so it was a private school. Right. How this happened, I have no idea. I crossed my heart. How there was money for this, why, etc. I have no idea. don't really care to ask, at least not right now. And of course, this was the late 90s, so and early 2000s. So Potter is bad, right? Harry Potter bad. Harry Potter devil. Blah blah blah. All that crap. And by the time I had started reading that series was about 05. Yeah. And so 20 years. Oh, I've known these books specifically for 20 years. Like me, myself, and I, not never related to my family or audiobooks. Oh my goodness gracious, I didn't know this. It's a big deal. But that's what started making me more of a specific reader. Like I kind of dabbled in reading here and there. Like I said, I just mentioned those 3 book series. But I always thought I was like, no, I'm not gonna do reading. No, 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 no. And then I read Harry Potter by myself. I knew the first 3 movies, but it was like this one, long story. Started reading and changed my life, and that was me. That's when I became the book person. Side note, Powder Monkey. I don't remember who wrote Powder Monkey. Powder Monkey is a story about a boy who gets conscripted during the Napoleonic Wars for on a ship. This gave me a love of nautical stuff. This is why I love Master and Commander. This is why I read Moby Dick, because I had a love of nautical stuff because of this book. But I couldn't read Harry Potter at school, right? Because no. So I had to read other series for school stuff. One of them was Ranger's Apprentice, which is, it is what it is, and it's fine, and I could get into that but there. But there was a book, it was called The Lighthouse Land. It was this strange sci-fi book that I feel was more like a young adult book, a little bit more edgier material, but it was a really different science fiction book. This was my introduction to like, you can go to a different world and the world's technology isn't going to be high tech. Boats made out of ice, at least how I imagine them. And it stuck with me because it was one of the first more serious books series that I read. And not only that, but because of my mother, this was my mother's idea, by the way. Because of this, I kind of I grew this rebellious spirit of like, yeah, you can't read Harry Potter, then you'll read this book and we'll read it at home. We don't have to listen to that authority. That was kind of part of this book, was that the book was probably way more edgier than Harry Potter. I probably shouldn't have been reading. Well, not probably shouldn't have, but it's kind of iffy. But I did it. I was like, oh, I can do it. I don't have to listen to these people that that's a bad book. I can decide for myself. So that's the book I'm choosing to answer your question. That was long. I'm sorry. Again,
No, you're fine. So okay, so we got the feather wing series.
Wing feather.
Wing feather. Yeah, okay. So sorry. Listen, I'm tired.
Well, it's okay. I will keep talking about it so often that
eventually I will get it.
Yes.
Yes. I believe it or not, yes, I was after women, but like I did stop to read a little bit. And one of the series that to this day still sits with me is it was the Star Wars Jedi Apprentice novels. I loved those so much.
My sister adores that series.
Yeah, I love it so much, and it stuck with me. I felt like Obi-Wan, and for those that don't know, it's basically about it's a little series where it's about Obi-Wan's journey of when he first becomes a Padawan to Qui-Gon Jinn, and in the little adventures that they went on. As in the Phantom Menace, we never really see what they were like before all of that. So, which I've always wanted them to make a TV series about young Obi-Wan.
Yes.
But whatever, they wanted to give us that middle of
I'm like, just do this book series or invent 2 Jedi, invent a master and apprentice. Go have fun, make up stories. I will be fine.
But it was always so good. The thing is, I've always considered the Jehovah's Witnesses, the way that things were, I always saw it as kind of like, I guess it's how it got me get through it, was I always kind of saw it like being a Jedi. So, because like, how a Jedi always has their, they always have their lightsaber. They always have to have that. So, like, in my mind, having the Bible was like having your lightsaber. So you always had to have that. And then, like, you had, when you were first like growing up, before you got baptized, you usually had like a mentor or somebody who helped you out. And that was like having a master and you were a Padawan. And it was just kind of, and then like the Holy Spirit to me was like the Force. So it was the only way that I could really, really get through it. But reading that series, I remember feeling like Obi-Wan all the time and always just kind of feeling like I always wanted to know. Because Obi-Wan in that series always was worried about like, what's the next thing? What's next? What's next? How do I get to the next thing? And I remember thinking like that as a kid of just like, you do one thing, you achieve it, and then you want to get on to the next thing so you can get to where you want to go. And I think that has stuck with me to this day. I've always been a person who It's like that song, I want to say it's by Alabama, but I could be wrong, where it's like, I'm in a hurry to get things done. I keep on running. No, I'm in a hurry to get things done. I keep on rushing, and whatever the fuck. But like, it's that, and that's how I feel in life. And I think that book series has always stuck with me because of it. I think that's the only one I really remember reading as a kid. Like, I can still see the book covers in my mind of like what those books look like. I wish I owned them.
Yeah. So here's proof. What's the first book cover? Can you tell me the pose of Obi-Wan?
Yeah, he's like this with the
doing this.
Like,
oh, yeah, yeah. I'm sorry. I thought me and my sister were the only ones who knew this stuff. So
yeah,
it's a big deal.
Yeah, I know that. I know it intimately. I always loved those. And yeah, I remember reading them around the time that like the Phantom Menace came out. So I remember when you had Ian McGregor as Obi-Wan, and he was doing his like, flipping around, and I was like, oh yeah, it's so cool, it's so cool. But in my mind, I was like imagining the kid that was on the first cover of the book. I was always thinking that was the real Obi-Wan. But yeah, I remember that. The only other series I remember reading later on, which I wasn't really a kid when I read it, but it was like the only series. Like, I didn't read a lot of series. Like, I read books here and there, besides like The Giver, which I also really, really liked. I don't know why that book stuck with me throughout my whole life. The Giver by what's her name, Lowry? Lois, I think it's Lois Lowry.
Lois Lowry.
The Giver by Lois Lowry, which is like this dystopian book, which as a kid, I did not realize was a dystopian book. It wasn't until I was an adult and they made a movie out of it that I was like, wait a minute, this was a dystopian book? They made us read this in like the 6th grade. And I was just like, and I remember thinking like, the other thing that was really weird, and this should have been a red flag to me, but like in that book, I kept comparing it also to Jehovah's Witnesses, because a lot of what was in there was like that. And I was like, but now as an adult and I look back on it, I'm like, oh, ew. Like, you realize like, oh, this religion was kind of a dystopian. I grew up in a dystopian household and didn't even know it. So yeah, there was that. But then outside of that was the Orphanage series. That's the only other one that I ever read. The Orphanage series is a sci-fi story that covers the span of like several decades of this one dude who goes to the military and goes out in space and, fights these like banana looking aliens. But it was really, really, it sounds silly, but it was actually really, really good. And so to this day, that's the only other series that like I can think of. There are not a lot of books that sit with me besides, my life mate. If it was a book, Their Eyes Are Watching God. But like, there are not a lot of books that stick with me like that. It's really interesting. So I know we're talking about Narnia, but it's just, this makes me think more about our childhood, all of our childhoods, and some of the like things that we were studying and watching and reading and listening to, and so yeah, it's just really cool. It's really cool that we had those things. So as an adult watching this, does it hit differently now that you've seen it as adults?
I think that's an interesting question to answer, because I will say that by the time I had watched the movie, because I'd grown up with the series, but by the time I watched the movie, I was a teenager who had basically already entered adulthood just way too early. So I feel like I've never seen it as a child. I saw maybe like a couple clips of it when I was over at someone else's house, but I never watched the full thing to enjoy it, to appreciate it, until I was an adult, or mentally I was an adult even though I was still a young teenager. I mean, it's one of those stories that it does kind of grow with me, and it does hit me different every time I watch it. And this past time, I think what hit me was that power of forgiveness, because again, this is like, it's very much a spiritual journey. And regardless of what resonates with everyone else's hearts, there's some element of truth about there being a deeper magic that I feel is true. So I've been trying to go on my own spiritual journey of deconstructing everything that hurt to believe when I was a child and kind of betrayed me to believe when I was younger, trying to find the bits of truth in it and then heal from the pain so that I can hold the truths without them making me bleed, if that makes sense. If that was a sloppy metaphor, but
no, it makes sense.
Yeah. So I think that seeing this story and seeing the element of forgiveness, because my thing with Edmund, this is still harping on Edmund, but I always, from when I was old enough to understand sibling dynamics, I always understood that Edmund was going to betray his siblings anyway. It didn't matter who offered him what. He was going to betray his siblings anyway. because he didn't feel valued. And that was it's one of those situations where everyone could have done better, and yet no one could have done better, because they're all children. They all do their best, and yet their best isn't good enough. It still causes pain. And that's a truth that I have had to learn is sadly the case in too many circumstances in life. I think that was a loss of innocence that I had to go through. It was one of those layers of having to realize that this thing that happened really hurt me, and I could have blamed it on a person. But when I thought about it, that person really did just do the best they could, and I could have done better too. So seeing the element here of forgiveness and unconditional love for someone who didn't deserve it made me realize that that's the kind of unconditional love and grace that I've been shown just to exist on this planet. And so that made me, it's very humbling for me, and it makes me extremely grateful. And it's also it's a big thing to grasp, and I feel like this movie will be special to me until I'm able to grasp it, if I'm ever fully able to grasp it.
First of all, I will say, to answer your question, the Edmund stuff is developed more as I've gotten older. But for me, the movie hasn't really changed. It's a great adaptation of the book, and it's just, it's that fantasy, it's that wonderful world that I love, and etc. And it's just really well done. It's really well made, really adapted. What has stuck with me more as I've gotten older, and this aligns with what you're talking about with Grace here, is Aslan's death. There's a bit, and they do it perfectly in this version, almost to the point where it's almost ripped out of my brain reading from the book, is I love that Lucy and Susan are walking with him, and Liam Neeson, who's the voice of Aslan, who does this perfectly too. So it's great animation, great voice acting here, that he asks him, can you please just hold my mane, just stroke my mane so I know that you're there, because I can't see it. And so, as a kid, sacrifice and death, resurrection never made much. It didn't really hit me hard. Let me explain. Because in one sentence you hear, Christ died, horrible. Then he came back to life. So I was like, okay. Because I was already like, 1,000 years ago, superstition of the sword ruled. Thank you, Jared, for getting that reference. I was already in like cartoon land anyway. So the idea of a dude who's God in human form, 3 in 1, blah blah blah, it all made sense to me. So it never really, it was like, I'm like, okay, father, wife, you've forsaken me aside, it's like, okay, he died, it's fine, whatever. But as I got older, it was through Narnia, I will say, which is why Lewis, again, frustrates me. Actually, I think frustrates me, this gesture is a little bit more accurate, frustrates me, is that it did resonate with me. Then I was like, this terrifies Aslan. He knows exactly what is going to happen, and yet it is still terrifying and painful to do. And that idea, of course, that he can just kill all of them if he wanted to, but he doesn't. And the embarrassment of that, it's heartbreaking. But then when he gets better, something they don't add in the film, which is fine, timing, but I love in the book, that before business gets happen, he jumps around because he's so happy to be alive. And then he goes, okay, now let's get to business. But I loved that because it made Aslan so much more understandable and so much more loving and gracious. Because I think as a kid, Aslan was kind of, I don't want to say a MacGuffin, but almost like a Deus Machina. Because the White Witch, she's got the armies and she's so bad, and all of a sudden, boom, Aslan. It's like Aslan pops up, and you're like, okay, we're done. Everything's fine. But when this idea that he comes here when time is necessary and leaves because he has all this mysterious stuff to do in crazy other lands and places, it gave him more of a realism that really stuck with me as an adult. That it's not, that in the story of Christ, it's not easy. It's the same if one person can tell you the story of the Buddha, and it's like he sat under a tree and he figured out everything. But as far as it was told to me, it's not easy. This stuff is not easy, and yet, so it makes the victory more substantial. And that's what I've taken as an adult. That always really stuck with me.
I agree with all of that. First of all, you guys are cooking today. Love it.
It's not smoke, it's steam. Steam from the steam plans we're having. For the record, me and my brother could have quoted that ad nauseum before the meme happened, but story for another day.
I think it's interesting that you talk about that loss of innocence, and especially in the space of forgiveness, Shaylon. Because our Oba's godfather has been teaching me a lot about forgiveness in some ways, and I hate these lessons.
Fair
I
enough.
hate them because I've learned the lesson that I've just recently learned the lesson. And I guess I knew it all along, but it was one of those things like, somebody has to say it to you for it to really like crystallize for you. But that thought of like, people do the best they can. Rick always says, nobody wakes up and says, I want to be the worst version of myself. And knowing that when somebody does something wrong to you, that in essence they didn't set out to be the worst version of themselves when it came to you. Though there are some people that do intentionally try to hurt other people, and that's their mission in life. But in general, the average confrontation that you have, the average time where you've been hurt or wronged, has usually been by somebody who thought that they were doing the right thing for them in the moment, and you just happen to be a casualty of that. And when you think about it from that perspective, it doesn't make you any less angry about the thing that's being done. When you say what you said about Edmund and Edmund's decisions and why he did what he did, you're right. He was a child, and no matter what, he would have done what he did. But and then there's also that whole, he's being kind of manipulated, and he was already kind of a bit of a troublemaker, and that being sort of the witch, the adult in the situation, playing on that behavior, seeing that in him and saying, oh, I see that I can use you to do whatever, and him doing it. It doesn't make me any less angry at the individual, at Edmund. But it does make me realize that at the end of the day, his intention wasn't necessarily he didn't wake up and was like, I want to get my brothers and sisters murdered. That wasn't that wasn't what he set out to do. And generally speaking, most of the time when people wrong each other, that's generally not what they're setting out to do. It's just kind of a byproduct of what happens. And that, I think that's kind of the hardest part about forgiveness, is kind of like the realization that you're human and you did a human thing, and I have to kind of forgive you. I can't be mad at you forever for being human, because I'm human and I've done those things. But at the same time, I'm still hurt by the thing that you did. And so I have to kind of look beyond my own pain to recognize that you were just trying to do the best with what you had. And that's a hard dilemma, I think, for any person to really deal with. I guess my innocence is still being depleted, which is good and bad, because it's good that I still have innocence somewhere in me. But the other realization of like, there's no such thing as justice. There's no such, like, people, I think the whole idea of people creating like, oh, karma, you're going to karma, things are going to go around and come around. I think people create the idea of that because we believe in an idea of justice, right? So when Edmund was doing the things that he was doing, you hope and pray that he gets his comeuppance and really suffers. And to an extent he does, in the sense that, he has to kind of face his siblings for what he's done, and he has to kind of eat that. He has to, you know what I mean? It's not as good as like one might want, like I wanted him to be smacked in the face with a sword, but that's my beef. But like, nonetheless, he doesn't get it the way that you want. So when you think about that, what goes around comes around. And this is another thing, another Ericism that we're going to go over today. And that's, like I said, justice doesn't exist. The idea that things are always going to be fair, that it's always going to be fair, that if somebody does something wrong to you, one day, somewhere down the line, they are going to get what's coming to them. 9 times out of 10, that's not going to happen. Most people won't get what's coming to them. Most people won't feel sorry about the things that they've done. And most people won't realize that they've been a piece of shit to you as a person. And you kind of just have to take that and move on with your life. And the wisdom of Aslan was exactly that. The recognition that even if Edmund did, because before he forgave Edmund and all of that, and Edmund was lost to them, Aslan wasn't like, we need to hunt this fucker down and we need to like kill him. He was like, it is what it is. People do shit. He's lost to us. Let's move on. We got things to do. And even in that, I was like, what? I would be like, I would be so hung up on that for like 80 more minutes of this movie. I would have been like just so on that. Every 15 minutes, I would have just been like, Edmund, you fucker, and I would like, we must find him.
You do that in a British voice and the high pitch to like the children.
I will not do that. Oh my God. But like, I would have been like, hunt him down, kill him, do something, feed him to the leopards or something. I don't know. Just, he must die. I don't know. The level of emotional maturity that Aslan had is just too much for me. I kind of hate it. I kind of hate emotional maturity.
That's fair.
in these moments. Like I really do. And it sucks because like when you have I like to think that everybody in this podcast has fairly high EQ and are pretty good at emotionally understanding things and being able to kind of have that self-awareness of what's what and how things should or shouldn't be. We're able to kind of create that distance between things. And so while I admire that trait in people, I also think it is the most annoying thing because sometimes you just want to be petty. Sometimes you just want to be able to say, it would be better if we beheaded Edmund and that just be the end of it. You know, if we had a full on, you know, there can be only one Highlander bout in the middle of the Narnian battlefield. Edmund and Peter going one-on-one, sword to sword, and you know, whoever lives, you know, lives, and whoever dies, dies, and that's the end of it. But no, you know, everybody had to be all fucking mature about it and responsible and be like, we're family and we have to move on. So yeah, fuck this movie. I'm so sorry.
That's fair. We did make you watch it
That's fine.
at a bad time, and that's on us, but we really wanted to talk about it, so thank you for humoring us.
I am glad that we're getting to talk about it. I really am. I'm glad that because you guys have been talking about it quite a bit in the group chat. Your references that get dropped here and there by both of these individuals here and there, and I'm always just like, I don't know. I'm not a part of this
is
club.
me on the daily between the two of you, so welcome to my world.
I had to suffer for a little while. Justice does exist.
Oh, to that end, real quick, something that's really one of the reasons why I love fantasy so much. I think as I knew this as a kid, but as I got older, it's really crazy. I always loved in Willy Wonka the film, because in the book, the children are all the mean children are all like mangled and weird. But I always loved in that film, talking about justice, that Charlie asked Wonka, you know, what happens to the other kids, and Wonka goes, "I'm sure they will grow on to live happily lives as being their horrible, miserable selves." And I came to really appreciate that. There, it's like, oh, maybe they got better. I'm like, nah, they grow up to be horrible people. And yet, at the same token of truth, fantasy using as truth to tell people things, the famous bit of Terry Pratchett from A Hogfather, the very ending where basically he describes as there is no such thing as justice or mercy or kindness in the world. People had to believe in that lie for it to exist. That if you crunch the universe down to the tiniest atom, there's no such thing as justice or kindness or mercy. So people have to believe in the little lies, like Hogfather, the story is Santa Claus, to believe in the big lies of justice and mercy and kindness. So it's a brilliant concept of what fantasy really always has had the power for, which I guess is why I always get kind of annoyed when people are like, well, fantasy just must be a 3-book trilogy about whatever trend is today. So it's something I find freaking brilliant from when I was a kid to now about this genre.
I think it reminds me kind of the movie Hook.
Interesting.
In the sense of, I feel like Peter at the beginning of the movie.
Peter a lot lately. Sorry.
I feel like Peter at the beginning of the movie. I feel like I'm disconnected from the magic of things that ordinarily would spark a level of passion and excitement and belief. I relate to Peter in that sense of I feel like the big topic of this thing, and I don't know if it's the point, if it should be the point, because loss of innocence does kind of play a part in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe as well. There's a lot of loss and innocence in this movie too. The betrayal of family, you know? I mean, because if you really think about it, yeah, Edmund is kind of a dick to his brothers and sisters before everything happened. But then, like, when you really think about it, like, your brother almost got you murdered. Like, not just like he got you, you know, ran you guys into some bullies and they beat you up and everybody went back home and was like mad about it, or he stole something of yours and he broke it. Like, he almost like got you killed. How do you come back and face? That's another thing that was kind of weird to me. It's like, how do you interact with that person after that? And understanding, yes, he was manipulated, whatever. But like, he wasn't 2, you know, he was old enough to be able to be like, otherwise he wouldn't have felt guilty. He wouldn't have known what he did was wrong. I feel like we're harping a lot on Edmund in this episode, but like, it's the realization of that. And then also, like you said, these children going to war, going into this battle is also a form of just loss of innocence. These kids that were like playing around and playing with a baseball, and they were doing that kind of thing, and they had this very innocent way of looking at the world, you know. And yes, of course, you know, the war was going on and they understood it from a very distant perspective. And so maybe I did pick up a lot more from the movie than I thought I did. But like, you have these kids who have this very distant perspective of the war, and then they're in a war, and they're forced to deal with that, and the cost of, because people were dying in that battle. It wasn't like, it wasn't like one of those random Star Wars battles where everybody was shooting at each other and like nobody. I mean, people did die in Star Wars battles, but it always feels like nobody's dying. Until they do the close-up shots where somebody gets shot off something. But like in general, it just feels like a bunch of blasters going back and forth and nobody's hitting anything.
G.I. Joe. You're thinking of G.I. Joe.
Yes, that's also fair. Transformers as well has that kind of feel of like, it feels like nobody ever dies in these battles, but they're just always fighting. But this was like one of those things where like, no, it was like the Lord of the Rings battles too, where it's like, no, people are dying out here. And it's like, and at the front lines were children. Like, war in general is a scary thing, obviously, no matter where you are. But being on the front lines of battle is terrifying. It has to be terrifying. You're the first one to die. That's generally how it goes. Like, you don't, they make it look cool in movies, but like, realistically speaking, if you're on the front lines, you're most likely going to be dead. So like, all of these kids, you have the whole family of kids that are just like, we're leading the charge. We might die. Yay. And it's just like us and this beaver and shit. And it's just like, I don't know. I think that's crazy. I feel like that within itself is a loss of innocence. How are you the same? How can you be the same? And that's the thing. Because I do remember now that I thought about it and I saw the trailer of Prince Caspian, I was like, oh, I did see this movie. But I remember not liking it. And I think I didn't like it because of this, my thought of like, I felt like they should have been more traumatized than they were. I feel like they should have been more. And I know it's kind of Disney-esque, and and Disney kind of likes to gloss over the real shit sometimes. At least they used to. They seem to be doing a little less of the glossing over now than they used to be. But nonetheless, I just felt like that's an interesting thing. So to me, I feel like this movie was really by about losing one's innocence in the grand scheme of things.
Mm-hmm.
And so full circle to what we coming back to this whole, I felt like I lost my innocence, and in revisiting the film felt different to me. But then just realizing now that I'm really processing the movie, and this is one of the reasons why I like to have these conversations, because I'm able to kind of process what we've watched. But yeah, I think that's a really interesting thing. C.S. Lewis really fucked up kids.
To that point, I think and this was my perspective again, like someone may have had a very different perspective, and that is okay. Their perspective is also valid. From my perspective, I felt like C.S. Lewis was one of the first people who actually was honest about childhood, because if you think about it as a metaphor, that loss of innocence that every child has to go through feels like a war. And so being a child on the front lines, I mean, regardless of whether you're blissfully ignorant or way too aware to your own pain, that growing up is a war. You're learning how to fight your way through the world and still hold on to some kind of belief, some kind of hope, some kind of innocence. At the end of the day, everything is against you and everything is out to kill you. So I think that very uniquely, C.S. Lewis was one of and that's why so many kids who became adults, this series is still special to them, because I can see a way that C.S. Lewis told a truth that not very many others were willing to tell, because he understood children and he understood what they were facing, especially in the historical context of the war. And it becomes a plot point in Prince Caspian, very much so, but it was hinted at in this book. But Peter and Edmund both very much wanted to fight in World War II instead of being sent to the countryside, instead of going to Narnia, because that was how you became anything in life in that time period. So, you had young boys, children, faking their age and lying so that they could go on the front lines of this horrible war. And you think about it, you're like, why would anyone do that? And so that is another, to your point, Charles, you have to see it through a historical context. It isn't a timeless thing. But I think it also tells a very unique truth about childhood in general, is we all fight as we're growing up, and we all have to fight that war. So I think that having an adult who can write a story for children that validates what it feels like to exist in their headspace is very interesting.
Charles, you did say that the it's not a timeless thing, it's more a historical context. But that makes me think too, because if you recall why this movie works so well in 2005 as opposed to why if it came out now. Because in 2005, we were just a few years shy of 9/11, and you had a lot of boys and women that were like joining the military with the desire to fight a war and fight the bad guy.
Side detail about 2005 in terms of blockbusters. 2005 had this film, which we've already discussed. It had Spielberg's War of the Worlds, which is a 9/11 element, Revenge of the Sith, in which everything goes to hell. There was Goblet of Fire, which is when everything goes to hell in Harry Potter. And even if you kind of wanted to extend to it, poor Kong had to die too again in Peter Jackson's version. So to that end, stuff was going down in 2005, apparently. Apparently people's brains were catching up to stuff like that. Sorry, I didn't want to interject, but
No,
you are totally correct.
I just think that's another thing that we've talked about. We've talked about in the past about like, trends and things like that and how they're affected by the things around us. But I think, in literary fiction, and not literary fiction, but in the literature department, I feel like it's common. Same with movies. It's like what's happening in the world is a very big part of what comes out. And I think it's weird that we're not, at least for me, it's very hard to line that up until later. Like, get older and you start to have a little bit of distance from it. You're being able to say, now I see why that would make sense, why people did do that. It's all a part of having media literacy and being able to kind of say, this is what they wanted, this is what they were trying to say. It's like when you realize that all of Marvel's movies are basically military propaganda. And you're like, oh, I didn't know that until you start to really look at like what they're doing.
It wasn't obvious.
No, it wasn't actually. It's not out. It's not. Well, like I said, a lot of people don't have media literacy. And a lot of people don't.
Yes, clearly.
And a lot of people don't.
Not to you. Excuse me. I meant in general.
No, but you're right though. It's true. A lot of people don't realize what's being created and why it's being created and who it's being created for. And that's because I think some people just like to kind of check out and enjoy things for the sake of just enjoying them, which is also fine.
Which is why I would say it's like, so the Marvel saga's military propaganda. No, it is not. It is just gun gum, yo, pew pew, little mythic stories that are. However, there is also a context. So both things exist in the multifaceted face of a piece.
For sure. For sure. So as we get to the end, let's do a lightning round as we wrap this thing up. So, first question. Would you rather questions? Would you rather live in Narnia or live in Neverland?
I would choose Narnia.
Charles?
I'm gonna say Narnia because, unfortunately, Peter never came for me and the time is over. But Narnia, I could have a house and I could live there. Which honestly is kind of interesting, disregarding what the invaders do to the Narnian animals and the people. In Prince Caspian's time, you have normal people living alongside the Narnians. Because again, I think they do this in this movie, but in the book, it's described as a country. It's not a world. It's the country of Narnia. And there was something very British of its period, but in my kid brain, it made it kind of more tangible, more real. So I would definitely, as much as I love Neverland, borrowing a phrase that Roger Ebert said about the 2003 version, I want to say, it'd be a great vacation now for me. But I could visit Narnia. I'd live there today, as well as when I was a kid.
I would have to say Neverland for me. Just I would have to. Though I would like to live in Neverland. I would not like to be a lost boy. So yeah. Would you rather be friends with Mr. Tumnus or ride Aslan into battle?
That's so hard because I really want a pet lion. Riding a lion sounds amazing, but I have to say, knowing myself, I would rather be friends with Mr. Tumnus because I would rather sit in a cozy little house in a hole in the ground and drink tea and sit in front of a fireplace and read books and tell stories as opposed to riding off into battle.
Yeah. I have to agree for various reasons, but mainly, war is hell. By the way, I always thought it was so funny that I think they do have a prop of this in the movie that I always love, that one of the books Mr. Thomas has is Mana Myth. I just thought that was, even as an adult, I'm like, that is so funny, and who wrote that? And why did they? It just cracks me up. It's just one of these little things that still tickles me.
For me, I guess I want to chill with Aslan, so I'm gonna go with him and go to battle. I'm staying close to him because he's a lion, and I feel like he'd, if he wasn't tied down and stabbed, he'd be pretty badass. So I feel like I'd be kind of safe. Most underrated fantasy movie ever.
Ever?
Yeah, ever. To you.
That's hard because I don't watch fantasy movies. I read fantasy books.
Fine. For you then, book. Most underrated fantasy book
The
ever.
Wingardium Saga.
It'll never not be the answer.
It will never not be the answer to any question.
I think it's interesting because there's a few I could have said back in the day when they were still kind of cultish, like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory or The Princess Bride, something like that. The Labyrinth, same thing. But now they're a little bit more cultish, so I can't really think of something like that. No, I can't even say something from Tim Burton because a lot of Tim Burton has become cultish too. Okay, I'm gonna. This is not a good answer. This is not a real answer. But I was a kid, and I finally got to see Studio Ghibli's Castle in the Sky, which is one of my favorite films. I thought that was the most incredible fantasy adventure film, just one of the most brilliant things, and no one knew what it was. No one cared. So it was just kind of me and my DVD. So I guess that one. But that's a bad answer. I really don't have a good.
I don't have any because I'm not a fantasy person. I mean, I'm trying to become one slowly, but I feel like I've yet to have ingested enough fantasy to be able to really say that. So yeah, I don't have an answer for that.
I think I have one. Rise of the Guardians from DreamWorks. No one likes this movie, and it didn't do well, and it's been completely dismissed. I loved it when I first saw it, and I still think it's really good. There you go.
Fair.
Rise of the Guardians.
Fair.
That's my answer.
Okay. Only one gets to stay. Narnia, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings.
I knew you were.
I'm gonna choose Narnia off of the misguided perception that since Charles already saved Lord of the Rings, then it's safe.
Damn, that means you left Harry Potter for me. Damn it. I feel like Jack on the door right now, and I was just left to freeze to death. I don't want to. Damn, this is the worst question for me though, because I don't want any of them. I guess if I have to, Lord of the Rings would have to stay. That would be that. Okay, Lucy, Edmund, Peter, or Susan. Only one can stay.
I've already said Edmund.
You want Edmund to live?
Edmund is me, is the answer. I relate to him. The Lucy, okay, can you rephrase the question of who has to die? Joking.
They all have to die.
It's Peter. Because Peter was so cool. Peter the Magic. Okay, you ever seen the It Makes Some Noise, the improv comedy show online?
No.
Okay, it's freaking hilarious, by the way. It's amazing what these folk come up with on the spot. But one of the details is the ending of Narnia, but one of the kids comes back as Republican, right? And it's really funny and really ridiculous. But in the improv moment, the actor who does it makes Edmund has turned Republican. And all my siblings were like, no, it's Peter. It would be Peter, who would be. So that's my case. And I don't mind Peter. I'm teasing, but that's like my thing. But no, Edmund, because he's the most interesting. No, you know what? Yes, I agree. But you know what? I'm still angry about what Lewis did to Susan. Screw it, Susan. Because I'm tired of Susan being trampled on by this man. Sorry and not sorry.
I have to say Susan is me. So I feel like I have to save her. However, I also know that if we're talking about who could sacrifice and it be a sacrifice that actually saves the world, Lucy would have to stay because Lucy is the one who always, always saves the day. Without Lucy, there is no saving Narnia. There is no even finding Narnia. So I'm torn between Susan and Lucy.
Notice how you also didn't say Peter, though.
However, I also have a very soft spot in my heart for Peter because he is the oldest and I very much relate to that. Like, you try your best, you try so hard to be the responsible one, and you're torn between the responsibility of your family and, doing your best and still it never being good enough. So, I have a very soft spot in my heart for Peter, but I also know that he is the kind of person that would sacrifice himself well. And he did in Prince Caspian.
For me, I would have to say, okay, because I'm gonna have to give it backstory for it to make sense to me. But like, it would have to be Edmund, but only because everything went left and his brothers and sisters actually died, and so he had to live with that for the rest of his life that they died because of him. That's the only reason why I would make it happen. So yeah, that's me. I'm sorry. I don't like Edmund. I'm not mad at him. I'm still mad at him.
Fair.
Yeah, I'll be mad at him forever. I don't know if I'll be mad at him forever, but I will be until I'm at least 40.
I will introduce you to my culture and make you try Turkish Delight at some point, though.
I promise I will never betray either one of you for Turkish Delight. The last question I have for you guys And this one is not just for you guys, but it's also for the audience. Which Narnia moment is permanently tattooed on your soul?
I would have to say there is a deeper magic that the witch doesn't know about.
Yeah, I've actually used this in conversations before, so I'm going to piggyback off of what you said, Jalen, because there's a lot. There's a lot of little details I can get into. There's a lot of little tiny moments and etc. But something I always really, really appreciated and stuck with me in like real things of the world is that you hear all these people and they go, well, this minority doesn't deserve to exist. This minority doesn't deserve to have these rights. This minority doesn't deserve to have my respect, etc., just in daily life, macro, micro, etc. But something that I always really loved that really meant something to me is that the witch thinks that she knows how to beat Aslan because she thinks she knows the truth. Aslan knows is something more obvious because he knows what it really is. So all she sees is the stone table. That's all she sees. But Aslan knows there's more to it than just that. And what is the phrase? It's like a deeper form, a deeper layer. But the reason I relate that to more serious things is that I always loved that if she knew the true meaning, right? And the answer is it's obvious, but she refuses to acknowledge that obviousness because she's like, well, technically, here is the table. So that's what everyone always says. So, well, technically, the minority did this, supposedly, so therefore we are justified. The answer is that's not true because there is something deeper and more obvious. You just refuse to know it. And to tie this in, this is actually more my original point to answer this question, is the concept of deep magic. That always really stuck with me. And coincidentally, the only other story that has explicitly used this topic is Harry Potter. And the reason I bring that up is that it fascinates me that the deep magic, the thing that's the foundation of the world, ties in with sacrifice, because basically what even Voldemort in Goblet of Fire confesses that he didn't realize when he was trying to go after the Potters is that love that Lily has for her son protects him. It's a deep magic. It's an older magic. So, and that marveled my brain that it's like, look, the witch casts spells and there's this and there's funds. But there's a deeper magic, something far more powerful and simpler. And the same thing with Harry Potter, Expelliarmus and this wand and this Latin-ish phrase, whatever. But there's something deeper, something far more powerful, and it ties into love. And that really stuck with me for years. I've had this theory too, that this is a literary theory. So let me get my professor. I don't have my classes around me, but my professor pipe here,
Mm-hmm.
for my professor talk. But I've had this theory that there are threads that tie everything with fantasy. They keep repeating. These little patterns keep repeating again and again and again. And one of them is interesting is that I was revisiting Harry Potter last year. I was like, what's really funny is Aslan has to go and die in the hope that his death will make everything right. And he walks in the dark through the woods and he has these companions to ease his pain as he goes to the evil one. In Harry Potter, in the last book, Harry, in the hope that his death will make things better, walks alone at night in the dark with the dead spirits around him of his loved ones to comfort him. And I was like, that's insane. And maybe that was certain authors' homage. I don't care. That's not my point. But it fascinates me that there are these little truths that keep threading through stories and people, these patterns that know that there is a deep magic that's there. You just have to pay a little bit closer attention instead of just accepting, well, that's the stone table. That's all there is. The stone table doesn't matter for Jack in the end. And I always thought that was I guess that's something, the biggest lesson that sears into my brain, which in conclusion, by the way, didn't get to get into the massive trauma dump of the context surrounding the story, but it is really fascinating that it doesn't matter how old I get, doesn't matter how much I learn of the world, and doesn't matter how much I've come to realize I don't agree with Lewis, and Lewis did not know everything like he and his cult of psychopaths. And I don't, you mean religious people? No, I don't. Clarify, I don't mean that. But nothing can ever take away what I really have taken away from this book. This is when I watched the animated CBS from the 70s. It's a weird special. I wrote that when I was writing my film review, and I said, I still love that dear old lion. Like, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. I still do love Aslan. I still love the story, and nothing can take away from that. So really, in a sense, the book is the stone table. Doesn't, oh dear, I was doing a bit. It was too much of a flick. I thought it'd be a lighter flick, and now I've ruined it. That poor book. I'm so sorry. It's fine. It's fine. But it is the stone table, and it doesn't matter what anyone else says. It is the core in it is the deep magic that survives forever. So there you go. Go now, receive the benediction.
So yeah, that is our show. We talked about the Chronicles of Narnia and
Save the book.
Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe and Charles's Tossed Book. Next week, we will be watching my second most favorite movie, The Breakfast Club. We get to watch that movie. I love that movie so much.
I miss John Hughes. I miss John Hughes so much.
Yes. So that's what we're going to watch next week.
But what if I say Breakfast Club is mid?
On that note,
I tease. I don't feel that way. I've seen this
It
movie.
says we all go to the back and have a grunge match.
Yes, exactly. That episode will never come out. You know what? Now that if that was the case, you would never see it. It'll be the lost episode.
Just pulls out a chair. Let's do the pro wrestling thing. Oh.
Thank you for watching. I want to say, and I want to say it on air because you guys deserve to be acknowledged. Charles and Jaylon carried this episode in the best way possible, and I am truly grateful that they were here. Otherwise, this would have sucked. And so thank you so much for listening, and yeah, we're out of here.
See